Hi guys, welcome to this week's screencast. So for this week's screencast you won't need to make Cornell notes, but you will need to produce some notes. Put these notes in the workbooks you've been working in or or onto your PowerPoint straight away, because we need to discuss the motor unit and skeletal muscular contraction. So for a muscular contraction you have to have a nervous impulse, so it's to do with the central nervous system. Now you don't need to know this in depth. However, I am going to speak to you in detail about this whole process so that you get an idea of it. Then I'll discuss what is actually going to take place with regards to what you need to know in your exam. So first of all, just to let you know, like a skeletal muscle can only contract when it's stimulated by an electrical impulse. And as I say, this impulse is sent from the central nervous system. So we have something called a motor unit. Now a motor unit consists of a motor neuron and the muscle fibers that motor neuron initiates. So you have two things, those two things make up a whole motor unit, which is something that you do need to know. So if you come on to here, this down the bottom right hand corner of this picture, this is a motor unit. Okay, so you have the motor neuron, which is this stick-like thing here. These are the muscle fibers it initiates. So as a whole, this makes a motor unit as a whole kind of structure. So motor unit, a motor neuron and the muscle fibers stimulated by its axon. This is the axon, the yellow thing there is the axon. You do not need to write this down, guys. I just want you to listen to it just so you have an overview of what you need to know. A motor neuron, a nerve cell which conducts a nerve impulse to a group of muscle fibers. So this is the nerve cell. A message or a nervous impulse gets sent down here to here, relays that message to the muscle fibers. An action potential is that electrical impulse. So that electrical charge inside the nerve muscle cell is called an action potential, and this runs down the motor neuron to this point here, known as the neuromuscular junction. The neuromuscular junction is a junction between the neuron and the muscle. So the point where the impulse stops. So the impulse stops at this point. So an impulse, electrical impulse from the central nervous system is sent down the motor neuron, down the axon of the motor neuron, gets to a neuromuscular junction where it stops. It stops because we're waiting for a neurotransmitter, so a message from something called acetylcholine. So this produces this is secreted by a neuron which transmits the nerve impulse across the gap, across the junction. So imagine a car junction. Imagine you come up to a junction, it's come up to a set of traffic lights, you have to stop at that junction. You stop at that junction, the neurotransmitter for us in a car is a green light. The green light turns on, we go. So the neurotransmitter in this section is with regards to the acetylcholine. So nervous impulse comes down the axon, stops at neuromuscular junction, acetylcholine is secreted, we pass the gap. Then this is what we need to know, the all or none law. We need to know, so please write down all or none law. Depending on whether the stimulus is above a threshold, all muscle fibers will give a complete contraction or no contraction will take place at all. So the nervous impulse comes all the way down here, it stops. If that nervous impulse is strong enough, all of these muscle fibers will contract. If it's not strong enough, not one will contract. That is why it's called an all or none law. Now this is what you need to know. So for a muscle to contract, it must receive a nerve impulse. So that's from the central nervous system down the motor neuron to the neuromuscular junction. Acetylcholine is released, which is the transmitter. If that is above a threshold, all muscular contractions will take place, or all muscle fibers will contract. So this impulse must be high enough to activate one motor unit. A motor unit is that motor neuron and the muscle fibers it initiates. Those two things together make a motor unit. So if the impulse is high enough, all muscles will contract. If the impulse is high enough, all muscle fibers will contract and cause movement. If not, none of the muscle fibers will contract, giving it the name all or none law. Now, you do not need to know all of this terminology: action potential, neuromuscular junction, neurotransmitter, acetylcholine. You do not need to know that. This was just an overview of the whole subject matter, because all you need to know about is the all or none law. To know about that, you need to know what a motor unit is and a motor neuron. So I suggest you write down a motor unit is a motor neuron and the muscle fibers it stimulates. This whole thing here is a motor unit. That's the motor neuron. So if we're coming to the exam question is really simple. Let's not get distracted by all those big terms, big points just made. This is the question that was on the last paper's exam and will be on your mock exam on Thursday. So I kind of don't want anyone to get this wrong because I'm literally telling you, I'm going to show you the answer right now. The nervous system controls the force Tristan applies when kicking the ball. Describe the law associated with nervous control of muscle contraction. Well, we know straight away the law is called the all or none law. So that is you describing. So you get a mark for literally putting the all or none law, 1 mark. Suggests all muscle fibers within a motor unit, 1 mark, will either contract or not, 1 mark. So you just need to know the actual law associated with nervous muscular control. Now, you are going to get asked this question here. The nervous system controls the force Tristan applies when kicking the ball. Describe the law associated with nervous control of a muscle contraction. As soon as you hear the term or see the term nervous control of a muscular contraction, that is when we are talking about the all or none law, and you need to mention a motor unit. So for muscles to contract, they need an impulse. What the motor unit is made up of is a motor neuron and the muscle fibers it initiates. So when you're describing this, describe the law associated with nervous control of a muscle contraction. The all or none law, that's one. It's to do with all muscle fibers within a motor unit, and what it talks about is it will either contract or not contract. Now, to give yourself a complete and a clear chance of getting the mark, I would put as well. The law states that if the impulse is high enough, all muscle fibers will contract. If the nerve impulse is not high enough, none of the muscle fibers will contract. So I realise that you may be confused with all of the big kind of words, or not big, but new words, new terminology here. You don't need to know any of these. I just wanted to give you an overview of the subject matter. So if you can write your notes on this here and then write down the exam question and the answer and put that onto your PowerPoint, I'll appreciate that. I hope you can understand why we didn't do this in the lesson on Thursday when we've got an exam to do, because it is very short, very sweet. It's only going to be worth 3 marks in exam. All right, thank you.